Once upon a time, there lived a spoilt brat. Her name was Isioma, and she was the last child of her parents. Isioma was born when her parents were advanced in age. They let her get away with so many things that her siblings dare not do in their time. Isioma was their retirement baby, the child who kept them company when all their children had grown. Mr. and Mrs. Obiora spared the rod when it came to Isioma, and oh boy, they raised a very spoiled brat, a girl who never raised a finger to do anything in the house. Her father employed several maids who did her bidding at every given moment. All Isioma did was get out of bed every morning, backing orders and making life a living hell for those who worked for her. She got whatever she wanted and did things without any form of restriction. Her parents had no form of control over her life. Instead, they resorted to gentle parenting, where they had to plead with Isioma to do their bidding. One time, her father, Chief Obiora, caught wind of the fact that his daughter traveled out of the state without his permission. He had no idea that she was traveling, despite living in the same house with her. Chief Obiora picked up his phone and began to plead with his daughter Isioma to return. He even resorted to bribing her with money as well as the latest phone, which she requested for a few weeks ago. Chief saw no wrong in what he was doing. His older children, Nina and Ugo, tried to step in a few times to put Isioma in her place, but Chief accused them of hating their sister. He defended her, stating that Isioma had a strong personality, a kind of personality that was easily mistaken for stubbornness. Ugo and Nina spoke to their parents severally. They outlined the dangers of their gentle parenting on Isioma, who was now growing out of control. However, Chief and his wife were too terrified to heed to their advice. They believed that if they scolded her too harshly, Isioma might run away or stop speaking to them completely. So, they continued to indulge her every whim, not caring that their daughter was growing into a vile and disrespectful girl. A girl who sold one of her father's cars and squandered the money on her friends. Isioma did not care that the car was one of her dad's favorites. She never apologized, and her father did not have the courage to scold her. He let it slide, and Isioma from that day on made his life a living hell. She staged her own kidnapping and demanded ransom from her father, who paid the money without delay. Isioma returned home the next morning, feigning fear and exhaustion, pretending to have gone through a terrible ordeal in the hands of the kidnappers. She staggered into the house, wearing the same clothes that she had on when she left, her voice weak like someone who had seen the gates of heaven and returned back. Her mother screamed and ran to her, wrapping her arms around her as if Isioma had just been raised back from the dead. What she did not know was that the police caught wind of the fact that she staged her own kidnapping. The police traced the ransom money to one of her friends who, out of fear, confessed everything to them. Chief was so devastated. He sat in silence for hours, his eyes filled with tears as the truth hit him like a storm. His precious daughter, the one who he had pampered beyond measure, had deceived him in the worst way possible. The police arrived hours later to arrest her, but Chief pleaded with them to allow the matter to rest. He could not stand the thought of his daughter in jail, so he decided to send his daughter to go live with her older sibling. Chief learned his bitter lesson and decided to allow her siblings do what they can to help her. Isioma had no other option but to agree. Her father threatened to hand her over to the police if she failed to adhere to his demands. She moved into her elder sister's house, where rules were put in place to help her become a better person. But in reality, it felt like a prison sentence to her. From the moment she stepped her foot into Nina's house, her royal lifestyle ended. No more personal maids to fan her while she painted her nails. No more daddy please to melt hearts, and certainly no more unlimited allowance to fund her extravagant lifestyle. Her sister Nina wasted no time enforcing the rules. She drew up a list and pasted it boldly on her room door, informing Isioma that she had to live by the rules. Isioma had to wake up by 8 every morning, clean her room, and shower before 9. Her sister Nina took away her personal driver, informing Isioma that she now had to use public transport like other girls in town. Nina slashed her allowance to 30,000 naira a month, money that Isioma spent in less than a minute on a normal day. Isioma now had a strict curfew. She had to be home before 7 or risk losing her allowance altogether. Isioma could not believe her eyes. She stood there stunned as she read through the rules, which seemed to be ridiculous. Isioma thought it was all games till her sister knocked on her door by 8 in the morning with a broom in hand. She had to sweep the whole house by herself. She even washed the dishes and scrubbed the kitchen floor for the first time in her life. By the time she was done, her back ached and her entire body screamed for rest. Isioma collapsed on the couch, panting as she began to grumble. "Nina, this is child abuse, oh!" She cried out dramatically as her sister Nina ignored her and walked into her room. Isioma could not endure what she believed to be hardship. She thought of what to do and decided that getting married was the best way to reclaim her freedom and escape from her sister's prison. Isioma convinced herself that marriage was her ticket back to the soft life, the one that she once knew, a life where she never had to do chores or abide by strict rules. However, this time, Isioma was determined to be smart about it. She told herself that she could not just marry any man, more especially men who are too serious and disciplined. Isioma needed an understanding husband, a man who won't stress or demand much from her. She wanted the soft life and was not willing to settle, not just for anyone. And so, she made up her mind to marry a fellow lastborn. In her mind, lastborns were naturally sweet, carefree and fun-loving. They understood comfort and hated stress. To Isioma, her plan was genius. She imagined two lastborns together, and the thought put a smile on her face. From that day on, Isioma began her mission of finding her lastborn soulmate. She attended every party, wedding and hangout that she could find and met several men who turned out to be the opposite of what she was looking for. Emeka was one of these men. He was disciplined, hardworking and seemed to like Isioma so much. However, Isioma lost interest in him the moment she realized that he was the firstborn. Emeka did everything within his power to win her over, but Isioma was not willing to take the risk. She believed that Emeka took life too seriously, and that made him the complete opposite of what she was looking for. Not long afterwards, she met Hilary, who was not only handsome but loving. Hilary lived in a small apartment in the outskirts of town. He was cheerful, funny, and absolutely smitten with her. Hilary wrote songs about her, love songs that would touch the deepest part of anyone's soul. He was a musician and also a lastborn, and he loved Isioma with every fiber in his body. One evening, he showed up at her sister's house with a bouquet of flowers that looked like they were plucked from a roadside garden. Hilary knelt down and professed his love for Isioma, saying, "Isioma, I may not have much now, but I will love you with all of my heart." Isioma blinked, looked at the flowers, looked at Hilary, and burst out into laughter. "Hilary, please," she said, waving her manicured hand. "Go and make money first before you talk about love. You can't feed me on your broke music career." Hilary's smile faded as he began to speak. "Isioma, love is not about money. It's about intentionality and selflessness." But before he could finish speaking, Isioma interjected as she replied him angrily. "Spare me that poverty talk, Hilary. Look at you. Your voice alone sounds hungry. I beg, go and make money and maybe, just maybe, I'll consider you. But right now, you are not my class and I'm not ready to settle." Her words sliced Hilary's heart like a knife. He forced a smile and walked away quietly, broken to hear such words from her. That night, Isioma blocked his number and went back to scrolling through Instagram. She dated several men afterwards, rich ones, serious ones, and even a widower, but none of them were lastborns. They were all too mature, too demanding, too bossy, and Isioma wanted someone soft like her, someone who would not stress her or tell her to wash plates. Then one Sunday morning, she met Chike. Tall, fair, handsome and rich. The way he spoke, his smile, his designer slippers, everything screamed comfort. When Isioma realized that Chike was not just rich, but also the lastborn of his family, she nearly fainted from excitement. "This is it," she whispered to herself, believing that God had finally answered her prayers. Chike's family loved her immediately. They all wanted her to marry him, and it didn't take long for Chike to ask her to be his wife. Isioma, without thinking twice, agreed. She returned home to her sister to share the good news with her, but Nina did not seem happy about it. Isioma had only known Chike for a month, and now she had accepted to be his wife. Nina could not understand why Isioma was rushing into a marriage with a man who she knew nothing about. She tried to speak to Isioma, tried to change her mind, but Isioma's mind was already made up. She could not stand doing chores any longer, and she definitely could not stand waking up early every morning. Within 3 months, Isioma and Chike had a glamorous wedding that looked like a scene straight out of a Nollywood movie. The hall glittered with gold drips and chandeliers. Isioma wore a diamond-studded gown, and Chike smiled from ear to ear as if he had just won a lifetime supply of free jollof rice. From that day forward, Isioma believed that she had finally escaped her sister's military camp. She was now Mrs. Chike, the queen of her own palace, and at first, oh, life was sweet. Chike spoiled her silly. They both slept till noon, ate takeaway every day, and laughed endlessly over childish jokes that only last-borns would find funny. Their house was a paradise for unserious adults. No alarm clocks, no chores, no rules. If Isioma did not feel like cooking, they ordered suya and shawarma. If Chike did not feel like going to work, he would shrug and say, "Baby, life is too short to stress so." They'd watch movies all day, scatter the living room with snacks, and fall asleep amidst empty plates and pizza boxes. For the first few weeks, Isioma was in heaven. This is it, she would tell her friends on video call. Marriage is so easy when you marry someone who understands you. But slowly, very slowly, reality began to hit. Chike would wake up by 12:30 p.m., scratch his head, yawn like a lion, and walk straight to the fridge, which was usually empty because nobody had restocked it. "Babe," you'd call lazily, "there's no milk again. What are we eating this morning?" Isioma would roll her eyes from the couch. "You're asking me? You're the husband now." You're the wife now," Chike would respond, grinning. And just like that, both of them would end up ordering food again, sometimes even forgetting to clean up from the previous day. Soon, their sink became a museum of dirty plates. The living room looked like a crime scene after a popcorn explosion, and the bed, always unmade, with blankets tangled like noodles. Isioma began to notice that things that once seemed cute were now annoying. Chike never folded his clothes. He just threw them everywhere. He left toothpaste without the cover, dropped his socks in the kitchen, and somehow always forgot to flush the toilet. One day, she stepped on poop in the middle of the sitting room. "Chike!" she screamed. "Why would you poop on the floor now?" Sorry baby," he said half asleep. "I was going to throw it away later." Isioma stood there staring at him, realizing that she had married a pig. It even got worse when she got pregnant. Morning sickness met a messy house and a lazy husband who still refused to grow up. Sometimes she would beg him to help her clean or cook something small, and Chike would look at her confused, scratching his head. "Babe, but you know I don't like stress now," he said. "And you think I like it?" she snapped one day. That day, Isioma stood in the middle of their untidy kitchen, wearing her maternity gown, hands on her waist, staring at the mess that used to be her dream marriage. Plates everywhere, wrappers on the floor, empty bottles rolling under the table, and her husband stretched out on the couch, snoring like a broken generator. She shook her head, slowly disappointed, as she could not believe the kind of man that she married. It was in that moment that she realized that she had finally met her match. For the first time in her life, Isioma missed her sister's rules. She missed waking up in a clean house and missed eating home-cooked meals. So, she decided to confront her husband, hoping that Chike would understand. But their conversation turned into a full-blown argument, one that shook the entire neighborhood. Isioma stood in front of him, heavily pregnant, waving her hands dramatically. "Chike, I'm tired. You sleep all day. You don't clean. You don't cook. And you can't even fix a leaking tap. What kind of man are you?" Chike blinked, confused and defensive. So now you're insulting me because I don't like stress? Did you not say that you wanted the soft life? You saw me and my fine face and said I was perfect. Now you want to turn me into a houseboy? Houseboy? You can't even be a houseboy, Chike, because houseboys are hardworking. Isioma snapped. I married a baby, a full-grown baby that snores like thunder. Chike gasped. Ah, me? Thunder? He stood up and placed a hand on his chest. Isioma, you have insulted me, oh. I won't take this. She folded her arms. Then do something about it. She said that Chike's eyes filled with tears. Genuine dramatic tears like a Nollywood actor auditioning for Best Cry of the Year. Chike sniffed loudly as he grabbed his car keys. I'm going to my mother's house. Since you think I'm a baby, let me go and meet the woman that raised me as a baby. Isioma rolled her eyes. Go and breastfeed there, oh. She yelled as he stormed out of the house. Chike drove off like a wounded lion, except that lions don't usually call their mothers crying, but Chike did. Mommy, Isioma insulted me, oh. She called me a baby and said I'm lazy. His mother gasped on the phone. My son? Lazy? After all the hard work you do? The next morning, his mother stormed into their house, her eyes full of rage. Isioma was in the living room eating apples when she heard the sound of slippers slapping the floor like a war drum. Mama, good morning, she greeted cautiously. Good what? Mama barked, dropping her handbag. Isioma, you open your smelly mouth to call my son lazy? The same son that I carried for 9 months and raised with blood and sweat. Isioma stared at her blankly as she began to speak. Mama, your son sleeps till afternoon. And so what? Mama shouted. Is sleep not good for the body? Did the Bible not say rest on the 7th day? My son is obeying scripture. Mama, he doesn't clean. He doesn't cook. Ah, so you want to turn my son into a maid? Mama clapped her hands. You young girls of nowadays, you don't want to serve your husbands again. When I married his father, I used to cook 3 soups every morning. Egusi, okra, ogbono, before 6 a.m. What can you even cook? Indomie? Isioma's eyes widened. Mama, with all due respect, your son is so dirty and lazy. Before she could finish, Chike appeared from behind his mother, peeking like a guilty child. Mommy, don't mind her. She's so disrespectful. In that moment, Isioma nearly lost her mind. She stood there, one hand on her waist, one hand on her swollen belly, staring at her husband and her mother-in-law. She realized in that moment that she had made the greatest mistake of her life, marrying a last-born. Isioma decided to be the bigger person. She was so grateful to her sister for being so hard on her for those months when she lived with her. Isioma stood there and watched as Chike's mother comforted her son and assured him that he was the best son ever. She watched as his mother began to threaten her that if she can't take care of her son, she would get someone else who would worship the ground that he walks on. That night, Isioma cried herself to sleep. She realized that she wasn't just married to a last-born. She had married the spoiled version of herself, multiplied by 2. And for the first time in her life, she began to understand what her father and sister had felt all those years, trying to reason with a stubborn child who thought the world revolved around her. It was then that she finally realized that she didn't just marry a husband, she married her own reflection. Isioma decided to speak to him. She folded her hand dramatically as tears filled her eyes. Chike, I'm tired. Look at this house now. Look at me. I'm carrying your child, cooking, cleaning, doing everything in this house. And you're here playing video games? She shouted, her voice trembling with anger and exhaustion. Chike yawned and looked at her like she was disturbing his peace. Isioma, why are you shouting? You know I don't like noise. You're stressing me, oh. Isioma's mouth fell open. Stressing you? She repeated, clutching her chest as though her heart had just been pierced. You're jobless, careless, and now you're telling me I'm stressing you? That day, Isioma cried like a baby. She packed her small box and returned to her father's house, heavily pregnant and broken. But this time, things were different. Chief Obiora refused to open the gate for her. Isioma, you made your bed. Now lie in it, he said quietly through the gate. Go back to your husband. Marriage is not for children. That was the day that Isioma realized the soft life was over. With nowhere else to go, She returned home, cleaned the entire house herself for the first time, and decided that if Chike wouldn't grow up, then she would. From that day, Isioma changed. She began to wake up early, cook, clean, and pick up after herself. She didn't wait for her husband anymore. She learned to budget, to manage the money that she had. When she finally gave birth, she did most of the work alone. Chike was of no use. He couldn't even hold the baby properly without complaining. "This boy is too heavy, oh," he said one day, dropping their newborn baby like a sack of beans on the couch. Still, Isioma endured. But one Saturday afternoon, everything changed. Isioma and Chike went grocery shopping together. She carried the baby strapped to her chest, held two shopping bags in one hand, and pushed the cart with the other. Chike was walking ahead, scrolling on his phone and whistling like a teenager. They arrived at the car park, and Isioma struggled to load the groceries into the car whilst balancing the baby. Her back ached, her hands trembled, and sweat rolled down her face. As she reached for the last bag, the baby suddenly slipped from her grip. "Jesus!" she screamed, panic flooding her chest. Before she could react, a man rushed forward and caught the baby in one swift motion. Isioma froze. Her heart was pounding, not just from fear, but from shock. The man turned, handed her the baby gently and smiled. "Isioma," he said softly, "it's been a while." It was Hilary, the same Hilary she once mocked, the same man who loved her with pure intentions. The musician was now standing before her in an expensive suit, his wristwatch gleaming and his car, a brand new Range Rover, parked just beside hers. Isioma's lips quivered. "Hilary," she stuttered. He smiled kindly. "You look good. How's life?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to speak, but no words came out. Chike, oblivious as always, finally looked up from his phone. "Babe, who's this one?" he asked, frowning. Hilary just nodded politely, handed the baby back to Isioma, and said quietly, "Take care of yourself, Isioma." Then he walked away, calm, confident, successful, everything Chike was not. That night, Isioma could not sleep. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring blankly into space, replaying the moment over and over in her head. She thought about Hilary, how she had laughed at him, called him poor and pushed him away. Now, she was married to a man who could not even carry shopping bags. Regret swallowed her whole. The next evening, just when she thought things couldn't get worse, a phone call came in that Chike's mother had slumped and died. Chike wailed uncontrollably. He refused to eat, refused to bath, refused to do anything. A few weeks later, they buried his mother, and during the reading of the will, Chike was given a huge sum of money. Isioma saw it as a chance to rebuild their lives. "Chike," she pleaded, "let's invest this money. We can start something small." But Chike, being the last born that he was, ignored her advice. "I beg, life is too short. I want to enjoy. You and stress are like twins," he said, laughing as he threw bundles of cash into the air like confetti. Within months, he bought a new car, threw lavish parties, and wasted money on frivolities. Isioma watched helplessly as everything vanished. When the last kobo was gone, Chike began to borrow. His friends stopped answering his calls, and reality hit him like a thunderbolt. Their landlord, after demanding rent for months, served them a quick notice, and Isioma did not know what to do. She knew that her husband was broke and had no money. Chike told her to ask her parents, but Isioma lied to him that her parents refused to help. She saw this as an opportunity to make him step up as a husband. Isioma stood back and watched as the landlord embarrassed her husband in front of their neighbors. Chike sold all that he had to pay for the rent. However, days later, their baby fell ill. They rushed him to the hospital, and the doctors demanded for payment before treatment. Chike was so frustrated. He called up his friends, but no one agreed to come through for him. He had no money to give and decided to run around for the money. Chike wandered the streets aimlessly. He met a rich man at a construction site and decided to beg for some money. The man, whose name was Chief Linus, told him to work at the site for the money. Chike was left with no other option. He carried blocks and cement on his head, and by the time he was done, his neck ached so badly. Chike in that moment realized that he had to work and that his mother was no longer there to bail him out. So, he prepared his CV and began to search for a job. He also helped out in the house, and Isioma could not believe her eyes. The man, who once believed that life was too short to stress, was now chasing buses and attending interviews. At first, Isioma thought it was all for show, that he'd give up in a week, but days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, and Chike did not stop. He finally got a job at a construction company, earning just enough to buy food and pay part of the bills. It was a struggle at first, but Chike soon adapted to his new life. He learned his lesson the hard way, that there is no such thing as a free lunch. His wife Isioma also learned her lesson, that comfort without effort is chaos. The lesson to be learned from this story is that love alone is never enough. Maturity, responsibility and discipline are what truly sustain a marriage and a home. From Isioma's story, we learn that being pampered without correction creates adults who are children in disguise. Her parents' excessive indulgence turned her into a woman who thought life would always bend to her will. But life, unlike parents, does not pamper. Isioma ran from responsibility, thinking marriage would be an escape from discipline, but instead, she found her mirror. A man just like her, lazy, spoiled and entitled. It was only when life humbled them both that they began to grow. Her husband Chike learned that being a man goes beyond bearing the title husband. It means working hard, taking responsibility and leading by example, not hiding behind excuses and dependency. Isioma learned that a soft life without effort is just slow destruction. True comfort comes from structure, not laziness, from teamwork, not entitlement. The story reminds parents that over-pampering a child in the name of love is not kindness, it's silent destruction. The same child you refuse to discipline today would one day face a world that has no mercy.